A couple of quick upcoming events on behalf of DATTA, because that's us tonight. The AGM, I think, is on the 28th. We've heard a bit of a to and fro from that, but I reckon that's going to be the AGM, and the venue to be announced, I think it's going to be at Tonsley, but we're not really sure at this point. So yeah, watch the space for that coming up. I've been working really hard on trying to get some clarification about health, safety and welfare, and I've been working as hard as I can with people from the department. They've been out to school here, I've been in there a couple of times over the last 6 months, because if you're teaching at Carpool to be by yourself and you really have got no idea what's going on in terms of what's legislated and stuff like that, I reckon that's not good enough. So, and who would look after that? Well, DATTA would. Cross sectors, so therefore, you know, it's difficult. So, as a professional association, we're trying really hard to get some answers for people about what's a really complex situation. And so I'll explain to you later what the model is that we're trying to use here and see what you think. But at that day, at the AGM, I've organised a lady from the department, from Health, Safety and Welfare, to come along. She's agreed that each year on one of our week 5s, and it's looking like it will probably be the second term week 5, each year will be a Health, Safety and Welfare night. And there'll be other things as well. But if we all get to know that, you know, the second Health, Safety and Welfare session is going to be a Health, Safety and Welfare one, well then, you know, we know that that's where we will get the latest from the department each year. Because, you know, like, we all know what sort of a minefield it can be. So anyway, more about that later. And Bailey Trading, now those of you who have been in the game for a while will know that that's where we get most of our stuff from, paints and finishes. So we're inviting a person from Bailey Trading to come along that night as well to tell us what is compliant from the... So we've tried to narrow that down. So anyway, that night hopefully we'll have a rep from Bailey Trading there as well to help us through it. So it should be a big night. Plus there's some great celebrations on that night in terms of teachers who are retiring and teachers who have done a great job, and yeah, so come along and have a couple of drinks and have something to eat and enjoy the night. There's another thing that's coming up in December 2016, a hell of a long way away it seems like, but there's a national DATTA conference to be held in Adelaide at the Wine Centre at this point in time, and we're just sort of embryonic at the minute in terms of our organisation and stuff, but we're getting there to put together, you know, a decent program over 2 or 3 days, and hopefully there'll be a lot of hands-on stuff. Like I thought was a pretty successful one we had here, because it was all about stuff you can take home and use in your classroom Monday. Otherwise I don't see much point. So that'll be the focus of that as well, if we can pull that off. But just have to watch the space for details about that up and coming events. And the clarifying forums on behalf of the SACE Board, if I just put the SACE Board thing on for a minute, there'll be 4 benchmarking clarification sessions run around the state. One at Roxby, so you can get on the plane with me and come to Roxby if you want, or you can get on the plane and go to the Mount with me if you like, or there's 2 at the SACE Board that might be a bit easier for you to get to. Have a look at those benchmarking activities coming up, SACE stuff, and talk about task design. Now a lot of the stuff that I'm going to go through here comes straight from the Chief Assessor's report, which I wrote in December, and I haven't even looked at it on the SACE Board because they write it much better than I do, they just fix it up for me. But this is sort of the raw data, so some of it's sort of cached in, this is what the moderators and markers think. Okay, so it's sort of reflective as well as a bit of my own thoughts about it as we go through. The first thing with the task design that we've just got to make sure that we get our heads around is that assessment design criteria have got to be covered. So investigation, planning, producing and evaluating are required for most tasks, but not all. But for those tasks, make sure that you don't leave that out. I mean, I had a case this afternoon, you know, of a person who I'm helping with to write their program have left evaluation out in assessment type 2. Well, you can't do that. So, you know, a very good teacher, very successful teacher, but what that's doing by leaving out evaluation is it's compromising the kid's ability to satisfy the performance standards in assessment type 2 in the product record. Learning requirements, they tend to get sort of overridden a bit, the learning requirements, but if you look at them, they're pretty generic and they dovetail nicely in to the assessment task pretty well. Page 24 of the document if you're reading at home or you want to have a look when you get back. And they're covered, there's a little performance standard sheets. Now I'm going to try my hyperlinks, I think they're going to work okay, but we'll just give this a crack. Okay, so I'm sorry you probably can't see that all that clearly, but on a sheet that I would be giving, I would be listing, this is a specialised skills task, so it's just PR123, and you know the due date and the stuff that we would normally put in there as well that you all do. This one is an example of one without any comments in it, and I'll show you one with comments later, and the rubric, which we'll talk about a bit later. These days it appears like as if what you need to hand in for a specialised skills task would be, you know, evidence of completion of the task, whatever that is. You know, it's generally images. It can be video, it can be an interview, it can be a website. One of the best things I saw at moderation this year was a student who handed in their product record in the form of a web page. It was not a particularly sophisticated web page, didn't need to be, but what was in it was conclusive, rigorous, and answered all the questions about the criteria. Absolutely brilliant. So in other words, you don't need to, you know, you don't need to do it hard copy all the time. You can just use whatever media you like as long as it satisfies the criteria. Make it clear how the task provides opportunities to satisfy the criteria, because as I said before, with a task design, some people actually write a terrific task for their kids to do, but they don't provide them with opportunities to satisfy all the criteria. For example, if you're doing a specialised skills task, it's likely to be PR 1, 2 and 3. Some people will put PR 1 in there and E3, say for example, so some planning and some evaluation. Fantastic. But unless the kids are given an opportunity to satisfy that criteria, in theory, 2/5 of the assessment is 0. Okay, so it's a big mistake. You just really have to try and get your heads around making sure that what you write in the task is accessible and that the kids do it. Yeah. For example, if they're making a drawing in furniture as part of a specialised skills task, cool. PR 1, 2 and 3 are going to be no-brainers. But you then have to get the kids to reflect for E3 and show some evidence of planning, how they went about to construct a draw, either in written comment or some other media, as I said before, to provide evidence so that you could say the kids have satisfied that criteria. Incidentally, if you're not sure what I'm talking about, give me a heads up as we go through. The assessment rubric we've had a look at, it's the way to go these days. I've always been a person who have written lots of comments, too many comments about kids' performances and stuff like that. Just feedback that I still give my students on a regular basis. But these days, the assessment board not really interested in that. They're more interested in how your kids have satisfied the criteria, and that's easily shown in the rubric. Make sure we've got timelines on there, it's pretty straightforward. Ensure that task provides opportunities to satisfy the intended and targeted assessment design criteria and performance standards. Ensure the students will be able to achieve all levels, including an A level. I'd say that because we do get some tasks through that, even if the kids complete the task, like a flash animation, and it looks okay, it still doesn't include any sophistication. So if you look at the criteria, yeah, the kids have done what you've said as well as they can, but the task itself doesn't challenge them enough to demonstrate that A level. Now, I've done it myself. You know, when I've thought this is quite a nice little task, it fits in neatly, blah, 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 blah. But the truth is, I haven't extended those kids in the class who are independent learners who want to take it that little bit further. And so, you know, it's, if you're going to give them a flash animation, don't put a ceiling on it. If you're going to give them a relational database exercise, don't put a ceiling on that. If you're going to get them to do a draw, how are you going to extend them? So you just need to think about, and how can you demonstrate that they're working at a sophisticated A level. You know, I'm sure you're about to manage it, but it's a reflection that we've all got when we go through the stuff. I think I've done that one. Yeah, I don't think I need to go through those things. It should be okay. Okay, the assessment types. Assessment type 1. The most successful ones that we saw identified the product immediately and used it to drive the course. Now, this is a little different. I want to explain what I'm talking about here. Because I've got 2 classes of Year 12s going now, so I've probably got about 40 kids. So some of this is working okay and some of it's not. The most successful ones identify the product either before they walked in for the first day, because you've worked with them last year, or within the first week, they've said, okay, I'm going to do a game, I'm going to use Unity, I'm going to do the map myself, I'm going to create the platforms. Fantastic. So let's sit down with that and let's work backwards. So what might your monoproduct look like? The monoproduct might look like a how to play my game on a DVD, best viewed at, take me through the construction of the game, love it. What might the materials apps look like? Well, I'm going to try importing images into my maps instead of using the default ones and see how that works. Cool. Let's have a look at image types, storage, vector graphics, as a data, as a material. What might the specialised skills look like? Well, what do I need now to learn that I don't already know that's going to scaffold me to move me through to doing my game? So you identify that. If I get time, I'll show my spreadsheets that I've just started on my kids today, where I've gone through that exercise and we've together negotiated what the specialised skills would look like. I hope you can see that if the kids have got a target straight away, they won't drift through term 1. 1/3 of it's gone. They will have a purpose, and we will scaffold their activities through specialised skills that are targeted and a material apps task that is definitely targeted towards a product that they are going to use, or materials or components that they're going to use in their product. And all that stuff that's entailed in that, like the research, you save it, put it in a folder, pop it away, and it comes straight back in the folio. For a third of the kids in my classes, I reckon it's going to work a treat. It's going to be, I'm really excited about it. For another third of the kids in the classes, I've got a default exercise. For example, in the IT thing, the default specialised skills tasks, one is a flash animation sequence, and another one is just a straightforward prezi on a topic, animated voiceover. So they're 2 relatively easy tasks, but they do scaffold maybe towards what the kids are going to do when they finish. So are they cool? Yeah, they're fine. But the targeted ones are so much better. So much better. So they identify what skills they need in the workshop and practice them in the skills scenario. And another teacher that I've spoken to about this pointed out to me straight away that it can mean that it's a bit skinny, that you haven't broadened the kids' experiences rather than that you've tailored them. I agree, unless you can work carefully with them and negotiate that assessment task with them so that it's got rigour, it's got depth, but it helps them learn about their game, or helps them learn about their submarine, or helps them learn about their cabinet, or whatever they're realising. It just makes a lot of sense to me. It's a funnel up thing. By the time they get to 83, the folio, they've done a lot of research. They've done a lot of investigation on materials that are relevant, totally relevant. That's what I mean about this stuff. So I'll mention it a bit as we go through. Okay. assessment design criteria in assessment type 1 is all four. So investigating, producing, planning and evaluating. And typically there are 2 skills tasks that people do. There are other courses where there's 2 MATAPS tasks, cool, and 1 specialised skills, no problem at all. You know, if that's your gig, if that's what you want the kids to look at, it can work really well. But both of them with targeted performance standards. Make sure that, for example, the specialised skills task I would recommend is PR123, full stop. The MATAPS tasks I would recommend that you do investigating 1, 2 and 4, and I'll give you this information in a minute, maybe PL3, E2. But it's your gig, you can choose those yourself, but, you know, to suit you. But don't, recommend this is Steve, this is not anyone saying this is me. Don't put producing in the MATAPS task, because there's none. And don't put evaluation and planning and investigation in the specialised skills unless you're going to assess it. Which you can, of course. You know, in photo, for example, in a specialised skills task, you might want the kids to reflect on their outcome. You might want them to plan their shoot. Of course you do. You can still do that. They can be formative, but the summative stuff maybe is PR123. So I hope you can see that if you target the selection of the performance standards carefully, you won't over-assess, but you'll meaningfully assess, I think. Yeah.
I need to apologise, I've got to head off. But,
no worries. Good to see you. We'll catch up with you next week then sometime.
Definitely.
Yeah, thanks very much.
See everybody.
Cheers. Appreciate it. Yeah, so there's 2 separate ways you can do this. I know a lot of people have got existing default experiences for AT1 for specialised skills, and I commend them that because they're usually enriching and valuable. So don't think you have to do what I'm talking about. I'm just saying from an economy viewpoint and from an independent learning viewpoint, force my kids into making decisions about products straight away, so that we can say, okay, I'm going to be making this bed. I need to find out everything I need to design and manufacture this piece of furniture, beginning with some specialised skills tasks that are tailored towards skilling me up to do that. Yeah, so there it is there. The specialised skills tasks, for example, address requirements 2, 3 and 5, learning requirements 2, 3 and 5, sorry, and assess performance standards producing 1, 2 and 3 only. And that was evident over COM products, MAT products, and systems and control as well. Okay. The most successful tasks also had clearly defined performance standards. That's okay. Maximised the spirit and intention of the assessment type, and didn't over-assess. So we've sort of been through that, but the spirit of a specialised skills task is just that, isn't it? It's a skills thing. So and what are most of our kids the best at? Doing things. That's what I reckon. So don't, in my opinion, don't overcomplicate it by getting them to do stuff that I think is peripheral in this assessment type. Yeah, now material or components. I've got 2 or 3 slides on this, and I'd like to explain why. I've got a couple of 2 or 3 slides on this. One is because the specialised skills tasks are our bread and butter. We nail them, they're great. As long as we don't over-assess them, they're fantastic. When people pick up your white bags and start looking through your work, one of the things they almost always have a look at early is the MATAPS task. No one says to do that. It's just usually an indication of where the student's at in terms of them engaging in investigating, planning and evaluating, because they have to engage in investigating, planning and evaluating in assessment type 1. The PR1, 2 and 3 in the skills task are almost a given. Almost a given. But this stuff needs a bit of work. I think we're getting so much better at this. So yeah, we've been through that. so I don't have to worry about that too much. It's I do investigating 1, 2 and 3, planning 3 and evaluating 3 in mine. But again, you can look through your own assessment stuff and do what you think, you know, suits you and how you want to teach it. And I think that works pretty good. It works okay for me anyway. And so that covers the assessment design criteria for assessment type 1, and it covers the performance standards in investigating, planning and evaluating. Yeah, there's a whole lot of writing there, but what I'm trying to say there is that the ones that were the best were typically and carefully targeted towards their design. And most kids, when they did their Mad Apps task, knew what they were going to make, design and make. And so the Mad Apps was definitely not generic. You know, we'll get a bit of brass and a bit of aluminium, we'll try some hardness tests and a finishing test when, you know, making stuff out of mild steel. You know, it's in the metals context, so is it okay? Yeah. Is it targeted? No. Could that be a response at A level? No. But you might have told them to do alloy and brass. So, you know, we can actually disadvantage our kids if we don't get them to target carefully and select carefully. Put the responsibility back onto them. It's their gig. You know, we don't have to have the intellectual property over this whole thing. No, it's a share, isn't it? It's a partnership, you know it. The more you can get them to buy into that partnership with you and not mandate stuff, the more ownership they've got. It comes out really, really clearly in the IT stuff that I do. When I can say to them, hey, what skills do you bring along? Where do you want to go with this year? If you can't think of something, I can give you a course, but you go away and think about it and come back. And they have this week, and it's not the first time, where they've identified the pathways they want to go. That's what independent learning is all about. And I think we can do more of it. So that's basically all that says down there, and you know, I go into a bit of garbage there, so I apologise for that. Yeah, the goals and aims in the Mad Apps task is really important. In other words, get the kids to decide and write down, why are you testing these materials? Or why have you chosen these materials? And secondly, why are you testing them? You know, if you're making a cabinet and you're testing, you know, jarrah and oak, but you're going to make it out of radiata pine, well then don't test jarrah and oak. Choose the materials carefully. If it's going to be made out of man-made boards, you know, don't test your MDF and radiata pine. Is it in the context? Yeah. Is it targeted? No. It probably doesn't help. Kids will be smart. If you say to them, hey, if you want to look at the components, you knock down fittings, let's have a look at the range of knockdown fittings that you think you might use, and then you choose a couple to perform tests on. So what does it have to do? Yeah, it has to be reliable. Yeah, it has to be fitted easily. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. It's got to be within this cost range. Okay, design some tests around that. Because you're going to use it in 6 weeks' time or 8 weeks' time. So let's get that decision making out of the way and write it up so it's targeted. They're the best ones. But make the kids do that. Make the kids write there why they're choosing the materials or components to validate that. Otherwise, you know, if I say to them, oh, why don't you go and do JPEGs and TIFFs? Oh, well, I'll go and do it, but I've got no idea what I'm doing. So, it doesn't work. Yeah, we haven't got that much time to show you a lot of good things, but I would really think that there needs to be some in-depth analysis in this stuff. Like, we're talking about stage 2 standard. So if you're going to be talking about, say, nylon and acetyl as two plastics you might use in a manufacturing mode on an NC machine, or ABS and PLA on a 3D printer, talk to me about, you know, thermoplastics, thermosets. Talk to me about the chemical structure of those plastics. Find out about them. Show me that you know what their basic chemical structure is all about. Demonstrate that. And then talk to me about some common characteristics and uses of those materials. Get that down into a reasonably succinct table or something like that. Then go and say, okay, well, first of all, you've already said why you're going to do it, but then go and say, okay, well, I need those materials to perform these functions. Cool. And these are the tests that I've designed to test the functionality of those materials. Then test them. Then result them. Then analyse them, and then conclude, all within 800 words, with a lot of diagrams, images, and whatever else you want to chuck in there to make it work. I've always said that one qualitative and one quantitative test is the best, because I think it gives a broader range to their testing regime than just two quantitative ones. But in some cases, there's not really a qualitative test that works. But usually there is. So they graph and result the quantitative thing, and they provide images to support the qualitative thing. Even in data, we can usually make that work. Although encoding is hard. Someone's doing Java or versions of Java, which I like, and they can demonstrate testing of those two types of coding. It's hard to do a qualitative thing with that I can think of anyway, but the quantitative thing is fine. Yeah? So one qualitative, one quantitative is pretty good. I know you need to tell me to shut up with this stuff, but keep on going because I love it. Yeah, alright, now I'll just try and show you a couple of examples. This is an AdApps task in IT Com products. This girl did an app. So she was looking at some software that might help her. So she's looking at Luminor and Visual Studio as her two components, if you like. And yeah, I like the idea of the introduction contents page. It's cool. It shows organisation. I'm trying to get my kids to respond digitally with this. I'm trying to get them to present it in an interactive format. Even if it's just a Word file that's bookmarked, don't do it. But you can. There's lots of other ways you can get it done. Yeah, and she's gone on and introduction and spoken about it, and you know we won't go on forever. I like this sort of stuff though. The little tables work pretty well. They're visual, they're organised, and then she's got some result in there that she's done, and then a bibliography. So that's pretty good. This one here. Is the best image to format a website. Now, you know, we won't go into it in great detail, but you know, we've got, of course there are, you know, 720, it doesn't really matter too much, but nonetheless, the kids go through, he went through a good process. I like this one because it was organised, there was some good stuff there that was qualitative and quantitative. It was clear that the kid engaged in discussion and looked behind some of the coding for the images and vector and that sort of stuff. Some speed tests, and it's resulted, and it's got a good reference on it. And the last one is a photo one, and it's like, wow, that's if it's ever going to load, that is. I'm going to stop that, try that again. Yeah, might be comparison. So this is in photography, and wow, this is really good. They have different names in photography because they're different sort of teachers, aren't they? Those photo teachers? Oh, they're different. No, brilliant. And this, it takes a little bit of working through this one, but you can see how does the camera work. I don't think fits in because it's not really a component. So I think they've got that a little bit wrong. But then she goes on to the sensor could be. But then she goes on to pixelisation. Love it. That's showing some depth there. This sort of stuff is getting pretty cool. There's some research going on there that's showing me about pixelisation. Then on to testing image size, which is pretty straightforward, but nonetheless was done very well. And then on to image capture using JPEG and RAW formats. I like that because in fact that's got implications for file storage, and so on and so on and so on. And, you know, there's stuff there that indicates that this student is engaged pretty well with the context. You know, some really nice qualitative stuff, and so on. I had a bit of an argument with the teacher about whether or not that was 800 words. Oh, well, we've got to do this and we've got to do that. So I think the 800 words might have been a fraction compromised there, but it was very good. At moderation last year, there were several A+ standard pieces of work that were reduced back down because the word count was compromised. So it does say 800, so we've got to respect that and get it as good as we can. Okay. Yeah, I think we're pretty much, done all that. Oh, I think the uses of images and graphs and tables, they don't add to the word count, but they significantly add to the depth of the response, I reckon. So I would recommend that your kids look at that. You know, that 1,000 words, and a picture tells 1,000 words, Pete.
Sorry, no, I was just going to say that I hear this every year.
Yeah.
But for those of us that teach and finish, maybe not creative enough to work out how to present it, I'll just set some examples. But, you know, I'll give my kids open slather, comment on, you know, pick a material you're going to use in your cabinet, you know, do some research on it. Whatever, might be whackers, finishes, you know the story. But I often see that graphing is a lot easier in other subject areas within our, you know.
Yeah.
And I just struggle with I know that you talk about this, but I'd like to probably hear some examples of what you use in, say, furniture, to do graphing or to do...
Yeah, I mean, for example, if you were in furniture and you had chosen a couple of materials, you know, maybe one of the criteria is the hardness test. So it may be not, but if it was, then you could do a standard hardness test on it. Use a vernier to have a look at the indentations and graph the indentations, indicating, you know, as simple as that might be, and a material's ability to resist indentations if it was in a furniture scenario. That'd be one thing I can think of straight away, but there's probably others. I mean, I've got some kids who are doing some submarine stuff in there. Hopefully I'll get a chance to show you later. So what they're doing is they're getting materials that we might 3D print the hull from and dropping them in a bucket of salt water for a month, so that when it comes out of the salt water, they'll be able to weigh them before they put them in. When they come out, weigh them again to see what sort of absorption rate each has got, so they can graph that. Then they can do some other tests on them as well. But yeah, I take your point, Pete. Is your stuff is great anyway. So
I just sort of mainly, and I thank you for your comment, but I just think sometimes what I just see as too trivial with some of the tests we do and the relevance to the real life of the product. And you know, might do the hardness of lacquers or the gloss, or the, you know, you can do all sorts of things, but I have struggled a bit when I can see, you know, guys working in, you know, polymers and other materials, CNC machining them, whatever.
Much easier.
Itself to that nicely. So I just hope we don't get too hammered in our traditional areas about graphing stuff.
You won't. You won't. It's just a dream sheet. Like, it's just something that we try and aim to do if we can across all the contexts. Because if it doesn't work, you know, if it's not appropriate, then it's not appropriate. But try and do it if we can. Yeah, 2 tests have done that. Okay, assessment type 2. Assessment design criteria for assessment type 2 is producing, investigation and evaluation. It's recommended but not mandated that the performance standards be PL 1, 2, 3, PL 3 and E2. Now, to say that again, the SACE Board is not saying that. I'm saying that it works. You are all great teachers, or you wouldn't be sitting here tonight. So just assess what you want to assess. So that works for me. And it works for quite a few people that run the course. In other words, that means there's 5 performance standards that have to be satisfied in assessment type 2. PR 1, 2 and 3 is our bread and butter, as we've already said. You know, PR 1 talks about the ability to use skill levels, techniques. PR2 is all about manipulation of equipment, software, whatever it is in your environment. PR3 is about independent problem solving. So they're all easy. The PL3 and E2, so evidence of planning and evaluation, evaluative comments, can be done in so many ways. I'm wondering why people don't conduct interviews a lot more. It can be time consuming, but it will probably pay off. I mean, or screen captures. You know, in a digital environment like one of mine is, you know, say to the kids, do your product record, but you do voiceover over it and talk to me about it. Tell me about the planning that you did. Put some evaluative comments in it. But say you've got a student in materials, say metal or something like that, who's a really good welder, really good in the workshop, has produced a nice piece of work. But are you going to get much written comment in the product record from them? Probably not. So could you say to them, okay, Jenny, you know, lunchtime next week on Wednesday, so give them a little bit of time, let's get together and you come up with a little script that talks about the criteria, and you give her the criteria and you script it a bit for her. Tell her to mention these words, the ones that the moderators will be looking for, which they'll be looking for anyway. So the words are straight from the performance standard. And you say, okay, you know, 5 minutes. We can walk around, you can show us your product, you can talk to me about it as a product record, but explain while you're going through that, any evaluative comments that you've got, or you know, how you planned it out. Now, it's going to work for probably 2 or 3 kids out of a class of 20, but it might be their best way of demonstrating investigation and evaluation.
Steve, does that become your work and not their work in that situation?
No, because the only thing I mean, when the kids write their product records for me, I tell them, I say to them, that's the wording in E3. You'd be silly if you didn't demonstrate compliance or, you know, against the criteria. So it's the same thing as saying to them, if they're going to talk about it, to make sure that you know, the moderator's going to be interested in sophistication or competence or, you know, the key words that you'd identify in them. Yeah, not many people do it, hardly any people do it, but I'm thinking that they should be. Like that web page that I said early on was just a brilliant piece of work. Now that student from the Riverland knew exactly what they were doing. He was a gun, but the media that he chose was fantastic. Took everyone through the whole stages of the manufacture, construction, realisation of the product in a brilliant way through a simple navigation system that I thought was innovative but definitely inclusive. Like, left nothing out. And if you weren't sure, you could go back and revisit it. But because it was in a digital environment, that person could show, you know, what the index page looked like and how we could unpack that through, you know, banners and contents and main pages or whatever. I wish I could have copied it. I thought about it and I thought, no, I'll sack me if I do, so I didn't. But I wish we could share that, you know, with you because, well, it was terrific. It was contemporary and it just made sense. It was in a digital environment, so why not use it, you know? Because the product record side of this thing is still dodgy. Product records can take many forms, must provide evidence against all performance standards, and must provide the whole thing. If your kids don't do the product record, they go harvesting because they need to. Then don't leave the trailer that that student spent 3 terms sitting in the corner unassessed. Get your camera out, take some photos of it. Okay, they don't do the planning and the investigation and the evaluation, but there's still evidence of completion, so you can still give them a grade in accordance with what you've assessed, and they're not going to get A+. They may not even get A, but they'll certainly feature strongly. I just think, I'm employed as a teacher to teach Year 12. My job is to teach the course and assess it. And it doesn't matter how you look at it, the product record is the only way that we've got to validate what happens in the classroom. It's the only way. The difference between the marking in assessment type 3, the folio, and assessment types 1 and 2 was in parity. Now, I'm really excited about that. So what that means is your marking of the folio was accurate and in keeping with the marks of the kids' guide for their skills stuff. Now, that's really fantastic. That wasn't the case a couple of years ago. We're just getting better at teaching it, I think, the folio, I mean. And so I reckon that's a real pat on the shoulder for everybody who's teaching this subject who bothers to hand in the assessment stuff. So there's not much I've got up here because we do this really well. The only thing that's dodgy is the product records at times. And I'm morphing over myself towards a series of screen dumps, images, or a video, and at the end, a statement of evaluation and a statement of planning. How I started was 3 columns, planning, evaluation, image. And that works, but I think a more sophisticated way and a simpler way, well, we don't put inane comments against every little thing you do in the workshop because there hasn't been much you've done really, not much planning. Rather than have an overarching summary of the planning that went into the task at the end of the product record or at the beginning of it, and evaluative comments, 200 words of each, I reckon works really well. And some of the ones I saw were very cleverly written, so I reckon that's a good way to go. So however you want to present your evidence in assessment type 2, please do it, however it shows them off. The thing that I know I've mentioned, but I think I'll probably, this one here, provide evidence to substantiate the allocated grade, whatever that is important if we can do it. For example, if you've got a cabinet that you're putting up as a C grade cabinet, so it's a successful piece of work at stage 2. Take a couple of photos, or get the kids to take a couple of photos of, that back that's got a little gap down the side, or the drawer that doesn't quite fit right. The overall thing is successful, C grade, beautiful, but show why it's a C grade piece of work if you can. Similarly, if it's a bed that's been made and it's a beautiful piece of furniture and it's A standard, A plus maybe even, get into those critical little parts that we know are there, that we would look at if we were coming out to look at it ourselves. Show us. And no gaps in the joints, it's actually square. All the posts are sitting on the floor, been beautifully finished. The mattress actually fits inside it. All that sort of stuff. So the more evidence you can get, like people who provide that sort of evidence, just like open the bag, close the bag in about 5 minutes, and substantiate, support the teacher's marks straight away. Now both major and minor products need product records. There's been a bit of confusion about that. Some people are saying, oh well, do I need both? Yeah, you do need a major and minor product record. Yeah. Look, I started out by saying, 6 to 8 images for minor product and say 12 to 14 for a major is a gross generalisation, but it's ballpark. It's around about that. I mean, people hand in journals now for, product records and not needed. And on the other hand, if it's a bit skeletal, well, we could use a bit more. So, you know what evidence is needed to substantiate the grade you've given. So if you can do that, that'll be fantastic. So I'm saying to my kids, a ballpark like that, but I'm going to try and get them to do it as in a digital format if I can, and an interactive format if I can. So some of my kids are writing codes, G&M codes. Well, that'll be fantastic. I'll get them to run through the CAM package, screen capture, and talk to me about speeds and feeds and depths of cuts and CAN cycles and stuff like that, so that when the moderators look at that, you know that the software hadn't done the job for them, that there's been some selection in the process. It's a bit like in Photoshop. I reckon if I was teaching photo, I would definitely do something like that. just to go through one or two of the process to show, you know, how you dodged and burnt that, or whatever you've done to it as a screen capture thing, animated and annotated, which would be a no-brainer, and most of the kids would like to do it. I reckon anything AT2, I haven't done much on that because I reckon we're all okay. The folio, assessment design criteria, investigation, planning and evaluation. So no PR1, 2 and 3. The thing that we need to get through our heads here is that the folio is a record of the design process. The product record is a record of the manufacturing / realisation. There is a difference. It is a little subtle, but there is a difference. For those kids that you've got in your classes who can think about this, it'll make a lot of difference. Because in the folio, we don't want to know too much about the manufacturing process. You can't divorce it, of course. But we don't want a product record cut and paste into the folio at all. Okay? We want a record of the design decisions that the student's gone through and the testing and modifying that they've done. You know, for example, a trial assembly is not a testing and modifying thing that goes in the planning folio. Okay, because it's a design feature. It gets muddy in a digital environment because if you're sitting in front of a computer, either doing your CAD drawing or design or a game or anything like that, while you're mucking around designing, you're also making it, aren't you? And you're also realising it before you. So it gets a bit muddy there. So, you know, a little bit of leeway in that scenario. But in general, say to your kids, talk to me about how you designed it, not how you made it. Okay? You cover, there's going to be some consultation there about materials there needs to be in the investigation. But in the planning part of it, I'll always start the planning part of it off with 2 or 3 thumbnail solutions from the design brief. Okay, and by thumbnail, of course, I just mean skeletal solutions that could satisfy the design brief. So a cabinet, 2 drawers, 3 drawers, no drawers, bigger top, larger door, whatever suits the design brief. Web page, you know, several navigation links across the contents, none, whatever the situation is, so that there's 2 or 3 solutions in a skeletal form that the student has been able to develop from the investigation. Then from that, you say, in an analysis, okay, well, I'm going to choose option C because it most closely aligns with my design brief intentions. So then you unpack that. And then you talk about, after that, the decisions you're going to make in the planning. Now, I used to get the kids to write step 1 for the planning, step 2 for the planning, step 3 for the planning. I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to say to them, just tell me how you plan it. So what's the first thing you're going to do? Oh, yeah, well, I better learn how to use CATIA. Oh, okay. Or I better make sure that if I'm making a toy that I've investigated Australian standards. Yeah, that's all been done. Or if I'm doing a shed or I'm doing a trailer, next thing I'm going to do is to make sure that I've got the materials organised, that I've got the drawings organised. So in other words, what you and I would do to plan something, it doesn't have to be a significant piece of writing with step-by-step stuff which morphs into a product record. So that's the delineation between talking to us about how they've designed it rather than how they've made it. And then the testing and modifying goes into the design solutions and not the manufacturing solutions. When you're testing and modifying in planning, you're not talking about whether it's a dovetail joint or a Morse and tenon joint. And you're talking about design solutions. How many drawers you're going to have, how many doors you're going to have, whatever. Alright? So that's where that subtlety is going, and that's the difference between a product record and a folio. Is one's manufacturing realisation and one's a strict record of design process, always with that little thing that says you can't divorce the design process from the realisation. There's considerations there, of course.
Steve, I've got a quick question from online. Minor products, do you need photos and how many, or is a mark sheet enough? I might have missed that.
Yeah, you do need evidence for minor product, and the product record should include that. So exactly the same scenario for the minor product as it is for the major product, but usually in less detail. It's an interesting question because nowhere has the SACE Board ever said that the minor product is 20% and the major product is 30%, because we don't talk in percentage terms, but the overall assessment type is 50%. So there's been some wide-ranging responses to what's a minor and what's a major product. It doesn't really matter, because what you do is put them all together to get the result. I guess our background is the major product has got to be that just wonderful piece of furniture, which is what we want it to be, like a wonderful website, or whatever it's got to be. But the truth is, the minor product can dovetail into that and, of course, provide evidence against the criteria as well. And it should, yeah?
Yeah, that was Bob Martin.
Is that?
So that, yeah, he's at the moment saying, okay. Yeah, that's good.
Okay. The most successful, just keeping on the time, the most successful folios provide students to demonstrate their engagement in the design process in order to realise the product. Now, that is, I didn't lightly write that. To give your kids a chance to tell me and the marker how they've engaged in the design process is really important, as opposed to how they made it. Yeah? It's what sort of things did they have to consider when they designed it. You know, it gets a bit muddy in the investigation, I reckon, because in the investigation what we always concentrate on, they tend to be concrete things, whereas when you get into the planning it's more conceptual, isn't it? That's what I think. And so we find it hard. I find the planning the hardest part of the course to teach, actually, because I reckon it is a bit conceptual and it is a bit airy-fairy and it's a bit, you know. So I find that a bit hard to teach, or the hardest part to teach. But if I try and explain it like that, just talk to me about how you've engaged in this design process. You've got an armoury of investigation that you've done, materials, joining systems, characteristics, whatever it is, to make a decision. Tell me how you've gone through that decision-making process to come up with your final design is the way we should do in the planning. Yeah? The most successful ones are also organised in a logical manner, often using the criteria, assessment criteria, to separate the system, the sections, while still clearly linking all in a seamless manner to achieve their goal. And the really good folios are just, mate, you know, if you have a look at them, you'd be thinking these kids really know their stuff. And the best kids we've got really do. I mean, there's 4,000 kids doing D&T. I just think to myself, we're 50 markers, 50 moderators now. It is just an enormous subject area that we're involved in. And it's a credit to all of you, because you've made it relevant in a changing environment that we've got, and a challenging environment that we've got. What's helped their numbers, of course, is products and the various media that people can write in that wonderful framework that we've got. You know, it's a very inclusive framework, so that's helped. But material products went up in enrolments last year. Cool. There's a lot of people still pulling engines apart as well, but you can get that. It's okay. So, you know, but the people who write in their assessments in the folio, if they do it nice and logically, it's really good. And it just represents a large body of research, and that's what I was talking about at the start of the night. So I'm trying to get my kids to target their product, and therefore all the research they do about, you know, trying to do an individualised map in a game, write down that information that you've learned, take screen dumps of it, put it in a folio, put it away. It's going to go straight into a folio later. And it's relevant, exactly relevant to the realisation of the product. It's targeted. You know, it's really powerful stuff if you can make it work. The successful responses reflected significant research, analysis and rigour, which I've spoken about before. This template is one that you've all probably seen and use. Yeah? That's just a great piece of writing. I've left, actually, this is the wrong one. This has got the Marcus comments on it on the left right-hand side. That's okay. So the one I'll give the kids is not that one. That's all right. Nothing there contentious. But that as a scaffolding tool, that's just, you don't get much better than that. No, I didn't. That came from the SACE Board. As a scaffolding tool, it is just. I'm sorry you can't quite read it, but you've all seen it, I'm sure. And I can give you a copy if you need it. And I use that with my kids. I give that to my kids. The only problem with it is that it probably limits a few of the independent thinkers in the way they respond to it. You know, it probably takes away some of their initiative in terms of coming up with the design brief. I mean, one of the things that I learned quickly in the SACE Board was that people from other subjects would come in and talk to us about how you could satisfy the course, and we're all saying, well, it needs to have ruled lines under it, it needs to be in blue pen, it needs blah blah, and they're saying, well, that's a load of rubbish. It just needs to be presented in any format that satisfies the criteria. And so I've learnt that, any format that satisfies the criteria. So this format will get the job done, but it might be a fraction restrictive in the long term. But anyway, we probably won't worry about that too much. This is a folio of the sub, which I can show you a bit later on, 2,229 words, pretty good. Yeah, I'm going to talk about that. And in the folio, that sort of stuff there is pretty good to have. I mean, there's 150 million great folios around. This is just one that probably is relatively inclusive. It's not one of the high flyers, but it's got all the information in, you know, design brief, blah, 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 as we go through. Incidentally, what I've started to do with my design brief is put that at the top of the product record. So the kids just cut and paste their design brief and put it at the top of the product record when you hand it up, so that when the moderators are looking at the work, they've got some idea what the student's actually trying to realise, sorry. Believe it or not, sometimes you think, what is this little thing that they're trying to make? So I'm doing that this year. So yeah, this is just going through some stuff for organising a power supply to a remote control submarine, and going through, you know, the investigation part. And I'll just whip through this stuff you've all seen before. But it is an inclusive folio, and it was over 25 out of 30, and it it does the trick. Circuit diagrams, and yeah, this sort of stuff is really valuable. Flow diagrams, just cool, because word count hardly any, information lots. You know, if you're sitting at home marking this stuff, 10 o'clock, and you're over it, and you're working through this thing, oh, it looks pretty good, you know. Oh, but wait, now I can actually see in a diagrammatic way what the circuit diagram looks like. Love it. Yeah, the kids all do this themselves, right? So that, you know, don't underestimate stuff like charts and, you know, diagrams and stuff like that in the folio, because, you know, it doesn't compromise the word count, but value adds a lot to the information. A bit more there, so yeah. And some images, some photos always go down pretty well of, you know, stuff that's put together and and in the folio, and that's really good. One of the issues that we've got, of course, is the fact that the product might not actually be finished when the folio is done, and often it's not, and so that, you know, you're compromised a little bit there, aren't you? You've got to guess the finish a bit, and in this case here the submarine wasn't finished, so you couldn't put a completed image of the submarine there to show people that it had been done, which is a bit of a problem. Okay, now I'm going to whiz through this bit because you'll know this stuff. That's a bit of a concern. I just love these things. Okay. Yep, all good, been there. Yep, been there. The targeted materials app's been there. Targeted specialised skills is good. Yeah, we've spoken about that. AT2 is a realisation task, with AT3 is the design process, been there. Yep, and there. Yeah, the marking and moderation panel actually made comments at the end of it that they could tell when kids had their heads around the different types of assessment types, and that they knew when the kids are engaged in the design process in the folio, as opposed to the product record, which, you know, was just a product record. Because we had a couple of opportunities to have a look at folios and the product records as well, so that was good. This will be interesting for you. I hope this is hot off the press, hopefully. Yeah, we're going to put this thing in, or make this available to you as a checklist for what you put in the white bags. And one of the reasons for that is that, well, people just forget to put things in. Or they haven't got them, or whatever. So we're hoping that this, and I'm sorry you can't read it, we're hoping that by making this available, that, you know, have you got specialised skills tasks, tick tick, is there Mat Apps task, yeah, tick, put in the assessment grades, yeah, blah 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 blah, etc. You can read it for yourself. But we think, we spent, during the holidays, I went in and had a crack with Don Murray, and he's done all the legwork, but we've, yeah, got that for you, and I'm hoping that will help a lot, especially for junior people. Got no idea what's got to go in the white bag, or what is the white bag. So hopefully that will help. So I'll put that on the website for you. Yeah, the other thing is that I got caught out this year, and it cost me because we didn't have predicted marks thing, predicted mark sheet for assessment type 2 this year and assessment type 1. It was just that one response that we had, didn't have a chance to change the mark. So yeah, I don't know if it didn't catch you out good. It did catch me out. So be mindful of that there isn't a predicted marks opportunity for assessment type 1 and 2, it's just one. And it's earlier than it used to be. Okay, what else have I got to show you? Product records, yeah. That's what we've got to send in, product records. The current lap, next Wednesday we're doing the laps, so if you want to ask me about any of that stuff, I'm happy to help you. What needs to be in with that, pretty straightforward. A marking scheme's got to be sent in, task sheets have got to be sent in, evidence of all tasks within assessment type for each student identified within the sample got to be sent in. The nature of that, of course, can vary a bit. For any misplaced or lost work, you need to put in a variation sheet. If you don't do that, if you don't put in the variation sheet, then it leaves us thinking that the kid didn't do it, but you've given them a grade for it. Well, it leaves them a nasty feeling in it anyway. So if kids have lost their work, or you've lost it, get a variation sheet from your SACE coordinator, pop that in the bag. Or if you want to change your assessment, your lap, I've done that plenty of times. And I'll do it this year too. As I go through, I'll change it a bit. Not significantly, of course, but still within the assessment design criteria and still within the performance standards, but I might change the wording a bit of some of the tasks as we go through. Because a lot of my stuff that I'm doing is individual, like I've been saying to you. So I'm going to have to write a generic task sheet for the skills and hope that the moderators get it. Even though the performance standards will be the same for every student, the actual description of the task will be different for some of them anyway. So yeah, look, I could talk about it all night because I want to help you, but I don't think I'm going to talk about that much more. We'll just have a quick yarn about health, safety and welfare in a minute. But are there any questions with that stuff? So I didn't unpack assessment type 2 and 3 as I will do in term 3 in week 5. There'll be another D&T thing then, and then I'll go through the folio in a lot more depth so that it will help tidy up the folio and the product record in a lot more depth in term 3. Right now, we're probably more worried about specialised skills tasks.